Kāti kia ora tātou katoa. Tupu Māori ora ki te whai au ki te ao maramati he wā Māori ora. E mea nei ngā mātua tūpuna ko te amorangi ki mua ko te hāpai o Kimuri. Ki a koe te pāpā e kēneti. Nā au tō tātou hui huinga i whakarite. Kia whakatōngia mai te wairua ki roto i tō tātou hui huinga, mai i tōna timatanga, taino atu ki tōna tutukitanga. Nō rere mihi atu ana ki a koe, kāti me te ino i tonu ki aia kia tiakina tātou katoa ki roto i ngā tūāhuatanga o te wā. Anā ko ngā whakaaro nui ki ngā aitua maha, kei runga ki tēnā o tātou. Ngā aitua ki roto i tēnei wāhi o te arawa waka, huri tuatu ki ngā rohe katoa o te motu whānui. Ko tahi tonu te kōrero ki a rātou kua riro atu ki te pō, hare mai haere. Nā ka whakahokia mai ngā rārangi kōrero ki a tātou e oku rangatira koutou katoa. Ko whakarauika mai nei ki runga ki tēnei kaupapa karanga, kaupapa motu hake o Whānau Ora, e mihi atu ana ki a koutou. Kei a koe te pāpā e John, e mihi atu ana ki a koe. Ko whakaritea mai tēnei taumata kōrero māku i te ata nei. Huri tuatu ki a koe te tuakana e rāwiri, e hoa, ko tōna tikanga kei roto koe i te whare i tēnei rangi, engari, kei konei tāua, e hari koana, hei harā te whare pāremata, kei konei tāua, kei wāinga nui i tō tāua iwi. Mihi atu ana ki a koe te tuakana. Kāti ki a koutou katoa e oku rangatira, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa. Greetings everybody, it's really awesome to be here. As I was scrolling through social media last night, there's one of two reasons why you all look pretty tired this morning. One, you either watched the Queen's funeral, which I know of a certain demographic, probably you did. The other is, of course, you've had a massive party. And I think it's the latter. But so you should. So you should. You should because you should celebrate the successes that you've achieved. Not just during the COVID pandemic, but as we reflect on 10 years of Whānau Ora. 10 years of Whānau Ora, so you should celebrate. Coming together for the first time in a long time. Coming together in person and not electronically. Coming together to be able to hug one another, to talk with one another, to cry with one another is hugely important. And so you should take that time to celebrate, and judging by Rawiri's social media, celebrate you did. But we want to be able to reflect on where we've come from, but more importantly, as John and also my tuakana Atawhai has already mentioned this morning, is where are we going? And Atawhai makes quite a telling comparison. Very shortly, we will be commemorating next month the 80th anniversary of the Battle of El Alamein. For anyone who reads all of the writings of the 28th Māori Battalion, you'll see that our ancestors weren't satisfied with simply winning El Alamein. They were only hell-bent on winning the war. El Alamein was simply one battle of that. I use that comparison because while COVID-19 has dominated our lives over the last 3 years, that is but one battle, because the war is still ahead of us. Now, it's not often or lightly I use wartime comparators to what we're trying to do here today. But what I do know is over the past 3 years, in particular with COVID-19, it has been a war. It's been a war for the hearts and minds of our people. It's been a war for the well-being of each and every individual of Te iwi Māori. It's also been a war to prove to others, of course, that Whānau Ora is not just a kaupapa, but that Whānau Ora equals success for our people, and that Whānau Ora equals success for our country. So, in that vein, can I say thank you? Humbly say thank you to each and every one of you. I've travelled the country significantly over the past 3 years, during the pandemic and in more recent times, as the pandemic seems to be in the rearview mirror of far too many. And what I noticed firsthand was the ability of our people to stand up when it mattered the most. The ability, whether you were in Kaitaia or whether you were all the way down in Murihiku, all the way out to Rekohu, Wharekauri, I saw whānau doing the mahi. But what I want to say to each and every one of us is while we celebrate this small victory, we still have a war ahead. So we must continue to ask ourselves, was it perfect? Did we do everything we could? What were some of those challenges that we must overcome in order for us to be even better for our whānau? And I'll tell you a couple of stories. On my travels, I met with a number of our gang whānau. The particular gang whānau I met with had never met a Māori health provider, had never met a Whānau Ora provider. So we must ask ourselves, did we do everything that we can? Or is the pathway that we walked to that point in time the pathway of 100% achievement? I want us to celebrate, and rightfully we should. But I want us to look forward. For all the parents in the room, you'll know that when your child hits double digits, you've got to change your parenting style. Makes it a bit harder. No longer ka kōwiring ia I te taringa. No longer ka kiki koe I te tau. Once they hit double digits, it becomes hard work. So happy birthday, Whānau Ora. You're double digits now. And that means that right across the entire system of Whānau Ora, whether you're inside it or outside of it, we need to make sure we do things differently. We need to parent in a different style, and I want to start by offering a different parenting style. Because for far too long, of course, the government, and I'm a representative of that government, plays a role of parent. Now, I don't use that term lightly because I know how uncomfortable that not only sits for you, but imagine being a Māori serving in the government. It's just as difficult. But what it means is, as parenting happens, we must also make those changes. We've looked towards Whānau Ora, and I've seen a couple of the reports that have come out from the pandemic response that continue to encourage the parenting style of government to change. And I want to be upfront with you about that. That's changing. Is it changing to the speed we want? Arguably not. But it is changing. That's Rawiri getting the call to go back to work. It is changing. And it's changing in many ways that I need us to be sure that we are in front of, that we fully understand, and that we can, of course, adapt to. What do I mean by this? Is for as long as I've been the Minister for Whānau Ora, which is 5 years, everybody has told me that the system must change. And we'll all agree to that, because I agree to that. That's why this government has set out on a huge transformation. What does that mean, though? That means that in health, things are changing. It means that Te Aka Whai Ora will be doing things differently. It means that system change is coming. In fact, as I said so during the pandemic and the Delta outbreak, it is on your doorstep. And my constant question is, are we, as not just a Whānau Ora whānau, but as Māori, ready for that change? Because I can tell you one thing about change. Everybody is relevant in change. Just ask them, they'll tell you. Just ask them, they'll tell you. But we need to truly be ready for that change. And it's going to be prickly, and it's going to be a little difficult, because that's what change is. Change isn't always easy. But if we aren't ready for it, the change in the health sector is sadly going to leave far too many of our whānau behind. There are also other changes in housing. As the Associate Housing Minister, for example, I've seen some amazing housing kaupapa. Amazing housing kaupapa. And what we know is, in the lives of our whānau, it's complex. It's not one issue, it's a multitude of issues. It's a range of challenges. Sadly, though, when I pop along to some of these housing initiatives, health isn't there. Whānau Ora isn't there. And that's the question we have to ask ourselves as we look towards the future. But that's not a doom and gloom question. That's actually an opportunity. That's an opportunity where we get the chance, through the learnings and the lessons that were discovered through the pandemic by this government because of your good work, that's the opportunity. That's the opportunity to be able to say that yes, funding is important, but yes, system changes too. And I'm proud to support the work that you're doing and the work that you will do into the future. Because it's not going to get easier, in my opinion, it's only going to get harder. As I looked across the data that was supplied to me, not just by the Whānau Ora Commissioning Agency, but also by Te Pūtahitanga ki te Waipounamu, Whae Helen, it is fantastic to see you. The data that was provided to me by Pacifica Futures, what it tells me is many of our whānau are actually realising their dream. But it means that it's now getting even harder or more difficult or more challenging to work with some of our whānau who really need us the most. Who really need us the most. I've never met a Whānau Ora navigator who said, "Ka nui tēnā, thank you, haere mai haere. Well done, you've reached your dream." Nor have I met a Whānau Ora navigator go to a whānau and say, well, this is just too hard. But in order to support that Whānau Ora navigator, we need to be aware and also seize the opportunity of change that is happening within the system right now. We also look towards Whānau Ora to inform that system moving forward. Many of you here aren't just Whānau Ora navigators, you're also nurses, health practitioners, community leaders. That is the opportunity that we have here as Whānau Ora to continue to challenge, push and demand for that change to happen. And I can tell you, kua puare katoa ngā taringa. Kua puare katoa ngā whatu ki ngā mahi e mahingia nei e koutou. So just once again, a big thank you to each and every one of you for the hard mahi that you do. As I listen to Atawhai, and it's quite easy to listen to Atawhai because he talks heaps. Must be a tibble whakapapa thing. But as I listen to Atawhai, he's right. Because in every one of our rohe and our kāinga, ka tū he whare hui. Engari kei roto, e rereke ana ngā whakairo. Regardless of where you go, you can tell instantly when you see the carving, no hea tēnei whare, no hea te kai whakairo. But what we must continue to allow is for each rohe to preserve the mana of their own whare, but look towards the differences of the whakairo inside. So it's only fitting that we come here to te puia o whakarewarewa. Why? Because in a time of our ancestor Apirana Ngata, when it looked like we were going to lose carving, when it looked like we were going to lose mahi toi, they centralised it here to teach our people right across the country. And that's the model that Atawhai spoke to in his opening remarks. To be able to say through central leadership, you can continue to have your own mana motuhake in your own hapu, your own iwi, and in the case of Whānau Ora, in your own whānau. And that's important to remember as you all leave this conference in due course to head home to your own rohe, to look towards what does the new whakairo mean for you in your rohe, that captures your stories, your challenges, your whakapapa, but most importantly, your dreams and aspirations for our people. So I say to you all, good luck and kia kaha. Good luck and kia kaha. Because if I think about my own matua in the north, Mr. Wallace Hetaraka, there's an old waiata in Ngāpuhi when Apirana Ngata was about to support the commemorations up north for the centenary of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. There's a song written that goes, E kia mai nei kua ngaroa Ngāpuhi. And for those who know the waiata, I'll leave it at that. But what he's saying is, who is it that said Ngāpuhi has lost their mahi toi? Kei hia wā rātou tangata tārai waka, kei hia tā rātou kai whakairo. And when he brought together carvers from around the country here to whakarewarewa, if you read through the messages that came through his speeches in Parliament, he said, ai, haere mai, whakakongia. Engari hoki atu koutou ki o koutou maunga. Hoki atu koutou ki o koutou whakapapa. Kia kite ai ngā hua. And that's a simple message. And that's the message I leave for each and every one of you here in this beautiful, beautiful wāhi mahi, in this taonga te puia. As we remember the words of Apirana Ngata, as we remember the words of our ancestors, but more importantly, as we remember the deeds of each and every one of you during a very difficult time, namely the pandemic. I say to each and every one of you, thank you. Humbly, thank you. As I read through the reports, I was reminded of some of those stories of our whānau, not just the data, because the data is important, don't get me wrong, but I was reminded of the stories of whānau pulling up to vaccination tents on horses. I'll leave you to guess where that was. Bet you the coasties are really keen to put their hand up. No, it was in Tūhoe. But I remember the stories of mums and dads bringing their whānau out for support to people like yourselves, having not received anything since the birth of their 5 tamariki. In fact, one family, 5 tamariki, none of them registered. None of them even known to the health system. None of them known to any social service. But during the pandemic, they came out. And guess who was there? Whānau Ora. You were. Arms wide open. I'm reminded of another story as I was down in Taranaki. We were walking the street of Waitara. And this kuia come out and she said to me, "Awesome, Peeni." I said, "What's that?" She said, "Well, I've had all the support I need." And I said, "Oh, so you've been vaccinated?" She said, "No, but I've had all the support I need." I said, "Oh, good. Ka pai whaia. Awesome." But that's the story, that's the connection, that's the hook, and that's all you. So tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou katoa. I'll leave my kōrero here. And as I see familiar faces, I might not get to each and every one of you, but I mihi to each and every one of you. Finally, to your leadership. Matua John, Whaia Merepeka, Whaia Helen, and so many of you. It's been through your courage and your stubbornness that these things have happened. And so to the leadership, I can't thank you enough for your constant challenge, for your constant advice, for being a harbour with shelter during a tricky time, not just for our whānau, but even for myself. So to our leadership, I say to you, tēnā koutou, ka nui wēnei kōrero, te arawa waka, kua puareo mai ngā kuaha o tō koutou whare ki au, o tira ki a tātou, ki tō tātou kaupapa, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa. Te rapu ana i te ara tika o tātou katoa. Tangi a te rū, kei te hoki mai ia. Te whakare o te o i te Kua tohaina wēnā puka puka. I'm glad they gave it after I spoke, otherwise you'd be too busy reading it and not listening. So I feel sorry for whoever comes after me. Kia ora matua, JT. But as you look through those reflections and as you look through the reports that have come out because of the work that you did, I know it's at the forefront of all of our minds that whānau is there and that whānau are in the centre of everything that we do. And finally, can I just say once again, thank you, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa.
Kia ora Peeni, ana e tahi taonga.